From A&E, this is Biography. And A&E's salute to the movers and shakers in Hollywood, the Hollywood Hotshots. And now, on location in Hollywood, Peter Graves.
Welcome to Hollywood and Biography's week-long look at the hottest stars in movies today. We're here at the gallery at the Motion Picture Academy, which is displaying sets from recent films, including this one from the Flintstones. It's a setting that would make any caveman or barbarian feel right at home, which of course brings us to a bodybuilder from Austria who flexed his muscles in his first starring role as Conan the Barbarian. What we didn't know about this former Mr. Universe was that his most well-developed muscle was his brain. And with it, Arnold Schwarzenegger orchestrated a career that made him a box office powerhouse. Tonight, our world premiere biography looks at the flex appeal of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back.
The bridge is out!
I don't think that there's any star that outdraws Arnold Schwarzenegger internationally. That heroic image, the indomitable image, again, is something that appeals to people.
He's the best at being Arnold, you know. He brings himself to every movie, you know. He makes the movie great.
Everybody just loves him. Everything he does is just cool.
Arnold does it again.
You could certainly call him savvy, and you would be right, but there's a lot more to him than that.
He had an iron will, an iron heart, and he knew what he wanted, and this is what he wanted, and this is what he did.
Arnold Schwarzenegger!
I felt certain, and everybody did, that Arnold was going to be something very successful in his life.
I would describe Arnold in one word. This word would be joy. That's his life.
It is midnight now, remember? He's just moving.
I don't know anybody that has more energy than him. I mean, I wish that I knew his secret. I don't know what it is. I mean, he's amazing. He really is.
Arnold is one of the most interesting people in America right now. He's taken his muscles and he's used them as a foundation for the great American Horatio Alger story. And I think Arnold's going to become one of the most important people in our generation.
They called him the Austrian Oak, the farm boy who came out of nowhere to capture the title of the youngest Mr. Universe in history. He made his way to this country bearing only a gym bag and an American dream even more expansive than his magnificent physique. Within 10 years, he popularized a sport that was previously the subject of ridicule and captured the heart of a daughter of the Kennedy clan, America's version of royalty. He built a multi-million-dollar business empire, took first place as the biggest box office star in the world, and even headed up the President's Council on Physical Fitness. Making the most of his considerable brains and brawn, Arnold Schwarzenegger has become more than a star. He is an icon, and he is living the ultimate American dream.
Many of us struggle to try and figure out what we want to do in life. Arnold figured it out very, very early. In fact, he may have figured it out earlier than anyone we know.
Like a scene from The Sound of Music, the rural village of Thal, Austria nestles between mountains, green forests, and the shores of the Talersee Lake. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born here in 1947, the second son of Aurelia and Gustav Schwarzenegger. They lived on the top floor of this 300-year-old house without central heat, a phone, or even a refrigerator. When they weren't doing household chores or attending the nearby Hans Gross school, Arnold and his older brother, Meinhard, loved the outdoors, going hiking in the nearby woods and spending winters skating on the taller seat where their father, the Austrian ice curling champion, taught them both to play. Although Arnold's parents were always attentive and involved in their sons' lives, Gustav Schwarzenegger, Thal's chief of police, was a perfectionist and a strict disciplinarian, expecting only the highest levels of performance from his sons. An avid sportsman himself, Gustav actively encouraged both boys in athletic competition, although often favoring his older son over Arnold.
I guess what he had to overcome is that his older brother was the brother who got everything, the attention, and whatever he did, he was allowed to do. And with him, his parents were much more strict. And so maybe he wanted to prove, this is very elementary in his life, I guess, that he is very, very good.
By his early teens, Arnold was already a talented team athlete, primarily in soccer. But in group sports, he found something lacking. Perhaps the personal recognition he was craving at home. On the day his soccer coach brought the team to a local gym for a workout, Arnold watched the handful of dedicated bodybuilders there with awe. Something inside him just clicked. Hearing the rhythmic clank of metal against metal, he picked up his first barbell, and he knew he had found his passion.
At the age 15, he said, "I'll be the best bodybuilder." Many didn't believe him and laughed at him. They said, "These are big words for such a young man." When he just started, we never thought he could be a famous bodybuilder. He had a low pain tolerance, but then his muscle mass started to expand greatly. This was a great stimulant. He started to work harder, and he said that he had to overcome the pain. He had to substitute the feeling of pain with feeling of pleasure.
It was just one of those things that when I started picking up weights the first time, and when I did push-ups and chin-ups and sit-ups and all those exercises that you usually do in a school, my body responded very quickly, so that in a very short period of time, I could lift more weight than anyone else.
Karl Marnul, the owner of the gym where Arnold first trained, took him under his wing, introducing him to training techniques and muscle magazines, and to bodybuilding idols like Reg Park and Steve Reeves. Arnold hung pictures of his heroes in his room and sat alone in dark theaters watching movies in which they starred. He dreamed of being like them and joining in their on-screen adventures.
He always liked to see movies. He went to the theaters a lot, and he always said that after he made it as a bodybuilder, he would go on to become an actor. He always thought ahead, and to him, America was the country in which bodybuilding, especially in that time, had the best chance as a sport.
6 days a week, Arnold would walk or bike the 8 miles from Thal to nearby Graz and work out for hours, sometimes collapsing on the floor. Once, he even broke a window in the gym to be able to train on a Sunday. In the winter, the room would get so cold, his hands sometimes froze to the bars. His parents were dismayed at this obsession with what they called the least popular sport in Austria. And Gustav laid down the law. His 15-year-old son would only be allowed to train in Graz 3 days a week. Undaunted, Arnold built a gym at home and continued to push toward the goal that glowed like a beacon before him. His self-esteem grew along with his muscles, and the 3-part success formula he discovered in those days would become his credo for the rest of his life. A combination of hard work, self-confidence, and positive thinking. To those who worked out with him in the gym, Arnold's dedication was inspiring, but they also admired his joyous enthusiasm, as well as his devilish sense of humor.
In training, the most important thing was to have fun. That was the most important thing to him, that he laughed and others laughed. That was his trademark laugh, with his big white mouth. It would always motivate you, and that laugh was contagious.
From age 14 to 18, Arnold's first priority was the gym. Then in 1965, he entered the Austrian army for his one-year compulsory service. His parents sighed with relief. Perhaps the military would cure him of his all-consuming passion. They were wrong. In the midst of basic training, Arnold learned of the Junior Mr. Europe competition in Stuttgart. He went AWOL from his units to his first bodybuilding competition.
He won that competition with the ideal score. At that time, 300 points. Never before anybody has reached that ideal score. I saw the fire burning. I saw it in front of me.
Clutching his trophy, Arnold tried to sneak back into camp. He was promptly arrested and thrown in jail for 7 days. But when news of his victory reached his superiors, they made him the company hero and even ordered him to keep training. By the end of his service, he had gone from 200 to 225 pounds of muscle, and he was ready to prepare for serious international competition.
Our biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger will continue here on A&E.
When 19-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived in Munich in 1966, he was a small-town boy overwhelmed by the bustling city. Accepting an invitation to train at Putziger's gym, he rented a shabby room and split his time between managing the health club and his grueling workouts. By the time he entered and won the 1966 Mr. Europe contest, he was already a bodybuilding legend throughout Austria and Germany.
Arnold knew he was a champ. Could you imagine a young boy at 16, 17, and 18 winning championships and thousands of people in the audience applauding him, cheering his name, asking him for advice? And here he was, a young kid, giving them advice, telling them what to train, and being idolized. It's inevitable that he should feel so much confidence within himself. And this confidence just poured out of him.
It was Arnold's unshakable confidence that drew him to London in September of 1966 to compete for the coveted Mr. Universe title. The 19-year-old wonder took his place among the most acclaimed bodybuilders in the world and amazingly won second prize. He returned to Munich better aware of his weaknesses and more determined than ever to take the title for himself the next year.
I had a very clear vision in front of me to win the Mr. Universe title. And that vision brought me so much joy and so much, there was so much excitement there that every time I went to the gym and trained in a gymnasium, it was like, in my mind, to get a step closer to this score. So I couldn't wait to go to the gym. I couldn't wait to do another sit-up, another repetition of bench press or squats or whatever the exercise was, because I knew each poundage that I lifted took me a step closer to this score.
Arnold looked in the mirror and he saw what could be done with his body, and he would meticulously shape it, very much like a sculptor might a piece of marble.
1967 was a whirlwind for the ambitious young man who managed to scrape together enough money to buy the gym for himself. He was invited to give exhibitions throughout Europe, and for the first time in his life, he had fans clamoring for autographs. When he finally returned to London for his second amateur Mr. Universe contest, he already knew he was a winner. At the age of 20, he became the youngest Mr. Universe in history.
It was purely his charisma. When he used to get on stage, that was dominant. It was an immediate interaction between him and the audience. It was right there. It was like, hey, I'm Arnold, and I am the winner. And the other athletes, his rivals, were automatically broken. He was mentally so strong that he automatically demotivated them. He was like, what are you even doing here? You're already second.
In 1968, Schwarzenegger won the professional Mr. Universe title, which attracted the attention of Joe Weider, king of the bodybuilding publishing empire. Weider invited him to compete in America. Arnold first set foot on the land of his boyhood dreams carrying a gym bag and barely speaking English. Still, he was cocky and ready to take his first American Mr. Universe contest by storm. But when he stepped on the stage in Miami, he was stunned to see the condition of the other competitors. The Americans were leaner, tanner, better defined, and more graceful than the 250-pound Austrian oak. Taking second place, Arnold was crushed. He was alone in a strange country where he was no longer the best.
He had taken things too lightly. That was such a bitter loss that he said to himself, never, never again will I lose.